I'll tell you this, you play that sound right there in any room and the big feelings come out. We're talking about heartbreak, we're talking about crushes, we're talking about the promise of a wild night. It is all there. Carly Rae Jepsen packed it all into one album, and actually very specifically into that sound, because the song that you're hearing right now is a song called Run Away With Me. It is a song that opens Carly Rae Jepsen's third album, Emotion. It came out 10 years ago. This is an album that changed how so many people live and breathe and experience pop music. My name is Elamin Abdelmahmoud. This show is called Commotion. Today, it's called Emotion, actually, you know, if you don't mind. Oh, wait, the pre-chorus just got here. Hold on. I can't interrupt that. Are you kidding me? Karen K. Tran is here. Casey Hoard is here. Rosie Decter is here. And guys, welcome to the show. But also, I'm not interrupting the chorus either, so let's hear it. It was a delight to see all your faces just as the saxophone part came up, like Casey Hoard sort of like fully activated, like your body was like, oh, I'm ready, I'm here. Welcome to the show, everybody. How's it going?
Great.
I thought that was a good note to start us off on. I feel like that's it's just the place you want to be. You know, Casey, I'm going to start with you because you had that gigantic physical reaction. Like, whoa, the saxophone is here. I'm in a different plane now. I feel like this question could be asked to you now and could be asked to you 10 years ago. But, you know, when you get to Emotion, Carly Rae Jepsen has already been known for another song, Call Me Maybe. It's a gigantic hit. You kind of know her for that. And then you get to this album. How does this album change how you think about Carly Rae Jepsen?
That's a great question. And I've been thinking a lot about this, obviously. And I don't know how much it changed what I thought about Carly Rae Jepsen, because I think it was more of an evolution. The same themes that are on Emotion of intense feeling and longing and desire and perfect little pop jams, those are very much present on Call Me Maybe, on everything on that album. But I think Emotion was just a step up.
How do you think it changes how you listen to this album, though? Knowing that hey, that's the Call Me Maybe lady.
I think what I love the most about Emotion is that it's a weird little underdog story, isn't it? Call Me Maybe is the biggest song in the world, and Emotion is the opposite of that.
Yes.
And but then if it was kind of an if you know, you know. And so listening to Emotion in the context of Call Me Maybe, it almost makes you love it more because it feels like it's your dirty little secret.
I think, Rosie, this idea of the sizable smash that was Call Me Maybe can sometimes cast a shadow over the career of an artist, right? You sort of need to live up to that, you know, idea of delivering a single that is just like that. There was so much pressure on this album when this album came out 3 years later after Call Me Maybe. What is the thread that connects Call Me Maybe and this album, Emotion?
Yeah, you know, I think Call Me Maybe was sort of this pure bubblegum pop moment that really took the world by storm. And I think if you listen to Emotion, you're hearing a slightly different sonic texture. It's more 80s synth pop. It's maybe a little moodier. There's more R&B going on. But I think what really links the two is that Carly Rae is a heart on her sleeve woman, you know, and on Call Me Maybe, it's all about that rush of a new crush, the fun, flirty feelings. And that is all over Emotion. This is an album for lovers. This is an album for people who are obsessively having new crushes that are maybe not the best idea in the world, but that you can't help yourself anyway. And so I think that's really the thread. I think that the sonic differences are maybe why, you know, Emotion didn't quite have the commercial reception that Call Me Maybe did. But I think if you know Carly Rae, you're hearing the same artist on these two versions.
Carol, let me ask you this. You said this album changed how you listen and experience pop music. Tell me about why this album did that for you.
Yeah, I mean, I remember even when Tug of War and Sour Candy came out and she was a little folk artist. Of course, I'd heard of Call Me Maybe at the time and I liked it, but it was played all the time on the radio and you couldn't escape it.
Yeah.
So I didn't really have to seek out listening to her music. And back then, I was listening to a lot of punk, rock, emo music, and I was just so I didn't want to listen to pop music at all. I thought I was too cool to do that. But, someone recommended the album to me and I thought I'd give it a try. I was surprised by how much I liked it. I had just written off pop music. It's Ariana Grande, it's Taylor Swift, One Direction. I wasn't interested. But
Oof.
once I was open to listening to it, I realized there's also pop singers like Carly Rae and Maggie Rogers. And, now I do have a soft spot in my heart for some of those artists, like Taylor and Ariana. Like, I'm not too cool to listen to their music now. It made me listen stop.
I was like, Karen, we're gonna have a problem. It's an entirely separate problem. I want to. Okay, before we talk more about this album, I think it's good to sort of like, as we're going through this conversation, just spend a bit more time with the music. So let's listen to a bit more music from Emotion. There's something really like beautiful about watching all of you guys emotionally react to the songs as they're played. So that song is called Warm Blood. It's produced by Rostam from Vampire Weekend. I think it's worth mentioning, Rosie, that, like the idea of Rostam being on this album, like sort of producing this record. He's one of a lot of different indie hit makers who contributed to this record. In addition to big, you had Shellback on this album, gigantic Swedish super pop producers. There's something about the range of producers and people who sort of worked on this record with Carly Rae. Do you want to talk a little bit about all those different collaborations and what they bring to Emotion?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, you have to think again that Carly Rae's in the mindset of like having just had the biggest song in the world. Mm-hmm. And it's like, where do you go from there? And her answer was Broadway. Her answer was, I'm going to go play Cinderella on Broadway, which is not,
as one does,
as one does. It's a lifelong dream for her. We love that for her. It's not maybe the natural follow-up to, I'm going to cement my A-list status.
Yeah.
And then I think because Call Me Maybe was so big, she had to kind of rush finishing the album that it was on, Kiss. And with Emotion, she wanted to take a bit more time. She wanted to write 200 songs, and she wanted to reach out to collaborators that she was excited about. And so she's bringing in these indie auteurs like Dev Hynes of Blood Orange, who worked with Solange. Yeah. She's bringing in Rostam of Vampire Weekend. And I think what's happening on this album is like the sound is getting a little more subdued than you might have expected from her previous work. And it's helping her kind of like bring in other textures, stretch herself out, find some space for like who she is as an artist. And in this broader context of a moment where a lot of like cool indie kids are starting to really take pop music seriously. Like I think the journey Karen just described was so many people's journeys at this moment in time. And Carly Rae's Emotion is really that blending of like cool indie status and then pop star kind of big feelings.
That thing, the thing that you just said is not always a sure bet, right? Like the idea of like bringing indie credibility to pop music, that is actually like a thing that a lot of people try all the time, and it just does not land with credibility. Maybe Casey, you can take me back to the first time you heard this album. Was your reaction immediately like, yes, I'm in on this? Or did it take a bit of time for you to go, I get it. I can embrace and understand what this is trying to do?
Yeah, I mean, my first memory of listening to this album was because I found it on Tumblr, because I was one of those kids. And yeah, I pretty instantly loved it. And part of the reason why is because I had just come out of the closet. Okay, everybody's shocked. And I had a crush on my best friend.
Oh.
And he didn't like me back.
But
instead of doing anything about it, I would just listen to Emotion over and over and over again. And so, obviously the music is on its face incredible. Like, I think you could show this album to anybody and they'd enjoy it, but it really hit me in a deeper place. And I think it's done that for a lot of people.
Just the thing that you described there, Hanif Abdurraqib was one of my favorite writers. Or he does this he has this relatively well memed photo of him doing this PowerPoint presentation about Emotion, and the slide that is behind him, it just says, "Tell a friend you're in love with them tonight." And so like when you said that, he's talking about this album and like That's what this album is about being like,
Mhm.
perhaps we should be a little bit less restrained with our feelings. And it sounds like that's exactly where it sort of hit you, Casey.
Exactly. Wear your heart on your sleeve. But you know what I love the most about this album is that it's about that very specific middle period between catching feelings and telling somebody about
Yeah.
them.
Mm.
It's such a lush space to live in. And I don't think that many artists explore that little middle period, especially with this level of depth or accuracy. And I think that's why it sticks, you know? It's something we've all experienced.
I also gotta say, Casey, it's worth noting that, like, in addition to being a culture writer, you also won a CBC contest for being a Carly Rae Jepsen super fan 6 years ago. You won a prize for that. Do you want to talk about what that prize was, Casey?
Why talk about it when I could just show you? So
Okay.
I won a game show, a CBC game show, to be Carly Rae Jepsen's #1 biggest fan in like 2019, which is a long time ago at this point.
Yes.
And the prize I won was this.
Okay,
So this is a little sword.
A
that I have.
sword. You won a sword as the biggest
Mhm.
fan of Carly Rae Jepsen.
If you look closely, you can see where my cats chewed it up. But otherwise, it's my most prized possession, and I am the current and forever reigning. So
Yeah, you're like, any
with
challengers
that.
will be defeated. Please, no one step.
That's right.
No one step to Casey. If folks are just joining us, my name is Elamin Abdelmahmoud, and this is Commotion, and we are talking about the anniversary of Carly Rae Jepsen's third album, Emotion, and the ways that it was a turning point for pop music. Karen, let's talk about this album lyrically. What are the emotions that are happening on this record as you listen to what Carly is singing about?
Yeah, I mean, as Casey and Rosie already mentioned, it's kind of about finding out about yourself. It's about unabashedly crushing on someone and even having unrequited feelings. But yeah, when I was younger, I used to roll my eyes if my friends talked about having a crush. And like I said, I was already a bit of a snob. So as I listened to this album more,
Yeah.
it went from being like a guilty pleasure to an album I love to talk about with other people. And now I realize there's nothing wrong with having a crush, and it's actually really brave to own your feelings and say you like someone or something out loud, whether it's a love interest or an album, without caring if you'll be judged for it. And I
Okay.
think Carly Rae does that so well because some of her songs are like diary entries and she shares her emotions plainly, like, I really like you.
I was gonna say, there's no song that does that more clearly than "I Really Like You," which is just quite on the nose. Let's actually listen to the lead single from Emotion, "I Really Like You."
But I need to tell you something. I really like you. And I want you. Do you want me? Do you want me to? I really like you.
Listen, I love this song. I don't understand why this album didn't sell billions of copies. I want to come back to that in a moment, Rosie. But I think it's worth noting, this comes out as a lead single. You get this video that has cameos from Justin Bieber. For reasons we never really learned, Tom Hanks is in this video. Casey, do you want to talk about like this like deeply unusual, weird rollout of Emotion that was? Like, how was this album rolled out?
Girl, I don't know what they were thinking. They released
Get in there.
They released this album 2 months early in Japan.
Yes.
She's huge in Japan because Japanese people have taste. But yeah, they released it 2 months early in Japan. And this is also an era where like every album was getting leaked, and
Yeah.
so I guess it was like, what if we just make it as easy to leak as humanly possible? So all the surprises didn't land. Yeah, I really like you as a lead single. I mean, I have my opinion about this, but it didn't work out the way it was planned, and it just didn't connect. Like the album just didn't connect. It didn't sell well. Yeah, and but I don't think it's unfortunate. I think that it's the way it was meant to be. I think it was meant to be underground. It was meant to be, like I said earlier, a dirty little secret that we all get to like venerate. Listen, we're not here talking about Kiss. I'll just say that.
So Kiss outsells Emotion by a lot on the strength of Call Me Maybe, on the strength of just like the fact that, Carly Rae Jepsen was kind of inescapable. But Emotion, Rosie, is clearly the fan favorite. Like, it's the moment that people, like, if you care about Carly Rae Jepsen, this becomes a turning point in your relationship with her. Well, talk to me about that disconnect, this idea, like, this is the album that did not sell as well. Why do you think this album didn't sell as well? Because it's clearly revered by all three of you, but also it's revered by so many people. So why do you think it didn't sell as well?
Yeah. I mean, cast your mind back to 2015.
I won't
this
do
is
it. Okay, continue. Yes.
this is a weird year in pop music.
Yeah.
We're transitioning out of the EDM pop that has been sort of plaguing our radios for the first half of the 2010s.
Yeah.
And we're heading towards the kind of tropical house moment, the more sort of disco-inflected moment of the late 2010s. But, Taylor Swift's 1989 has just come out. So the kind of 80s thing is starting to happen. And so reasonably, you would think this album could really connect with people.
It's in the pocket.
But it's in the pocket.
Yeah.
But I think it just didn't grab people who were fans from Call Me Maybe. I think they didn't see the thread. And I think I Really Like You is the most similar to Call Me Maybe, but it's maybe got a little bit more. Personally, I find it a slightly grating hook just on that one song. Perfect album, slightly grating song.
Yeah.
And so I think the fans from Call Me Maybe were confused by the album rollout. They sort of turned away. And what happened was a different crowd tuned in. It started getting critical acclaim.
Casey tuned in. That's who tuned in.
Casey tuned in.
Yeah.
Karen tuned in,
Yeah.
I think, it started getting some critical acclaim in places like Pitchfork that were not covering Carly Rae Jepsen beforehand. And you started getting these indie fans tuning in, and you started getting queer fans tuning in. And I think that, it ended up finding its home just in a very different place than maybe what was originally imagined. And I totally agree that this is a blessing, not a curse for Carly and her career.
Yeah, I don't think anyone on Carly's team or Carly herself sort of goes, this album really should have done much bigger than this. I think they're kind of like that. It did the job it was supposed to do. Karen, do you agree about that? Do you sort of see it as a blessing or a curse? Should the fans who are so all in on Call Me Maybe, should they have followed Carly Rae into Emotion? Or does it kind of make sense to you that they didn't?
I do think it's a bit of a blessing, because I think when musicians get a big viral hit like that, they don't know what to do with themselves. They don't know what the next step is, and their label maybe fumbles the marketing plan, and they have no idea what to do. I think this was the biggest pop record of the year, but only in retrospect, because I think fans and critics only started taking Carly Rae seriously a little later. And maybe because Call Me Maybe was such a hit, there's tens of millions of casual listeners who didn't care to dig deeper into the catalog, as Rosie said. And I think that audience wasn't they weren't waiting in anticipation for Emotion when it came out in 2015, which is 3 years after Call Me Maybe had taken over airwaves. She hadn't built that repertoire that listeners weren't expecting such an amazing album.
I do think that, Casey, the conventional wisdom is quite often that you keep the fans that you have and maybe acquire new ones, hopefully. But the idea that the people from Call Me Maybe didn't necessarily follow, how does Carly Rae then end up bringing on these new people who are saying, you know what, we are interested in an indie pop artist who does something at this level of craft? How does she win over music critics? How does Emotion do that, you think?
I mean, how does it do that? I think it's because it was a flop, honestly. I don't think it would have I think that one thing about indie people, one thing about Pitchfork, they hate success. They cut down the tallest growing flower, right? And she was growing too tall. Call Me Maybe was too big of a hit. It was so easy to crap all over that back in the day. Yeah. Can't crap all over her. Why punch down? She's already doing so badly. And so it's like I said earlier, it's an underdog story. It's something to root for. And frankly, it's just undeniably great. It really is.
Do you have a theory as to how she also brought on a new generation of queer fans in terms of how this album did that?
Well, earlier all I can speak from is my own experience as a queer person. The themes of this album and also the sonic palette of dance pop from the 80s, which has always been very precious to the gay community. The themes of this album of longing and limerence and desire, this is something that is so integral to the queer experience. So, not only is it a fun dance pop album that you could play at the club and enjoy and, stomp down the street to and pretend you're on the runway, which I may have done once or twice. it's also about something that like really sometimes queer people feel like we're alone in. And she made us feel less alone, I think, by making this album.
Karen, there's this piece in the New York Times from a couple years ago when The Loveliest Time came out, and then the article sort of described what is called a middle class pop star. You know, they're the people who don't sell out stadiums like Taylor Swift or Beyonce, but they do have this deeply dedicated fan base. And what do you think of that description as applied to Carly Rae Jepsen? Because she was sort of one of the people mentioned in that idea of a middle class of pop star.
I mean, I think it is a fitting descriptor, maybe not necessarily the most flattering for her, but she writes pop music and she's a great performer, but she's not a diva. She's not doing choreography with a whole team of backup dancers or doing 3 outfit changes per show. She's not messy online. She's not starting fights with anyone or known for wearing anything scandalous.
Yeah.
So she seems like a pretty normal person who's just also a pop singer. And for the majority of her listeners, I think that makes her really accessible. Like when I went to see her show at Bud Stage in 2022 with Bleachers, I was surprised that the show wasn't sold out at all. The tickets were really affordable and, you know, everyone had good vibes.
It's interesting that you say that it's not a flattering description because Rosie, I would say like that's the dream, right? In many sense, like
I know.
like there is no, you know, there's no like overly personal relationship with like something that's happening inside of Carly Rae Jepsen's life. I don't know anything that's happening in her life. I just go, Carly, thank you for the cookies out of the kitchen. I will go eat these, and then I will and then you go live your life. But I guess maybe there's something to be said about like pop stardom being desired as something that has to be sort of explosive, and maybe Carly Rae doesn't quite get to that level. Is that okay that she's in that place?
Listen, hey, we need to expand the middle class. You know, this is what this is.
The middle class and those working hard to join them. Yes, continue.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think it's absolutely wonderful to be a middle class pop star. I think the sort of celebrity culture around the A-list, it can be very toxic in so many ways. You know, the wealth can be excessive. I think that Carly Rae has kind of hit the sweet spot. And I think she basically has creative freedom. She gets to do whatever she wants, and what she wants to do is churn out impeccably crafted pop songs about romance. And yeah, thank you for the cookies. I think another sort of artist who's referenced in this kind of group is Charli XCX, who was really sort of creating this path of it's okay to be doing like reasonable sales numbers, not charting, and like having a deeply dedicated fan base. Yeah. And now she's interestingly sort of broken through back into the mainstream in a major way. And so also once you're in the middle class doesn't mean you're necessarily there forever, but I think it's a great thing to aspire to, and she should feel I think she won the lottery in my opinion.
I was gonna say, like, you mentioned Charli XCX in that particular context, and I can't think of a single Charli XCX fan who's like, hey, loved Brat and I'm glad he was as big as it was, because it actually kind of feels like you're like, hey, too many of you are now in the space where I used to live, so maybe stay out of it. And Carly Rae's kind of managed to not have that happen. So maybe that is a blessing.
You don't
too.
want to be oversaturated, you know? You don't want to be everywhere, because then people get sick of you.
Yeah, I think when people were going around being like saying Kamala's Brat, I'm like, is that good for the Charli XCX brand? Like, is that helpful? Casey, last word to you. If someone was going to just like leave this conversation right now and say, all right, you've talked me into it, I will listen to this album on its 10th anniversary, what song from Emotion should they listen to today?
My pick is Gimme Love.
Oof.
I think that it's a little bit of a deeper cut, so you might not have heard it before. And I think it's a sonic odyssey that captures everything that Emotion does best.
I think that is a beautiful place to leave it. I appreciate all of your time. Thank you so much, you guys, for being here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, of course. I'll tell you this. My pick for a song from that album is Making the Most of the Night. That's a song that I return to quite often. In the meantime, my name is Elamin Abdelmahmoud. This show is called Commotion. Casey Hoard is an editor and journalist based in Toronto. You can read his tribute to Emotion online at Extra Magazine. Rosie Decter is an editor at Maisonneuve in Montreal. Karen K. Tran is a freelance writer and photographer in Guelph. That is it for the show today. My name is Elamin. Listen, the show will be back tomorrow, but I won't. I'll be back next week because I'm headed to Newfoundland. In the meantime, have a great week. Talk to you soon.